Everybody Loves Raymond was one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history. With its sharp writing, relatable family dynamics, and a cast that felt like a genuine family, the show ran for 9 seasons and left a lasting mark on pop culture. But not every cast member's journey ended the same way, and some departures were more emotional than others. Here's a look at the real stories behind why certain cast members said goodbye. When Everybody Loves Raymond came to a close in 2005, fans around the world felt like they were saying goodbye to a second family. At the heart of that chaos was Marie Barone, the ultimate overbearing mother, played to absolute perfection by Doris Roberts. With her sharp tongue, meddling ways, and surprising bursts of genuine love, Marie was unforgettable. It's important to understand that Doris Roberts didn't leave the show in the way some actors do. Everybody Loves Raymond didn't fall apart or lose cast members along the way. The show ended on a strong note, with the entire cast still together and still delivering the same brilliant chemistry they had from the very beginning. In fact, the creators made a conscious decision to end while the show was still on top, a rare and admirable choice in Hollywood. Everyone involved, including Doris, respected that decision, even if saying goodbye was hard. For Doris, Marie Barone wasn't just another acting gig. She once said in interviews that Marie was a character she truly understood and connected with. Marie had layers. She could be annoying and meddlesome, sure, but she was also fiercely loving, proud, and even vulnerable at times. Doris brought real heart to the role, and audiences felt every bit of it. Over time, she and Marie practically became one and the same in people's minds. That kind of deep connection to a character can be both a blessing and a curse. It's a huge accomplishment, but it also makes moving on incredibly tough. After the show ended, Doris was actually quite selective about the work she pursued. After spending 9 years in a demanding, high-profile sitcom, she wanted to do things on her own terms. She wasn't interested in playing just another mother-in-law, or being reduced to a stereotypical older woman role. She had range, serious acting chops, and she didn't want to be boxed in. So rather than accept roles that didn't excite her, she turned her attention elsewhere. That elsewhere was actually quite impressive. Doris had a deep love for the stage, and after Raymond, she returned to her theater roots. Stage acting had been a huge part of her early career, long before she became a household name. She also started writing more, eventually publishing a memoir called Are You Hungry, Dear?, where she spoke openly about her life, her struggles, her triumphs, and her time on the show. On top of that, Doris became more involved in advocacy and charitable work, especially around issues affecting older actors in Hollywood. She spoke out about ageism in the entertainment industry and pushed for more respect and opportunities for senior performers who still had so much to give. She did make a few guest appearances on shows like Law and Order, SVU, The Middle, and Hot in Cleveland, but she never took on another major long-term TV role, and that was mostly by choice. Nothing else quite measured up to Marie Barone, not because she couldn't act in other roles, but because she had already created something so iconic that was hard to top. Doris Roberts passed away in 2016, and her death hit fans hard. But she left behind an incredible legacy, not just as Marie Barone, but as a trailblazing actress with decades of great work, a sharp sense of humor, and a heart as big as her talent. Peter Boyle, who played the unforgettable Frank Barone, didn't leave the show in any conventional sense. He was there from the very beginning, in 1996, all the way through to the final episode in 2005. But because he passed away just a year after the series ended, it can feel like he left too soon. His sharp wit, deadpan delivery, and hilariously blunt remarks as Frank made him one of the show's most standout characters. In the last couple of seasons, fans began to notice that Frank sometimes didn't have as many scenes or seemed to be more in the background than usual. This led to a lot of speculation. The truth is, Peter was quietly dealing with a great deal behind the scenes. He had suffered a heart attack in the 90s, battled cancer, and had a stroke not long after the show began. These weren't small issues. These were serious, life-threatening conditions. And yet, Peter never let it show. He was professional through and through. He kept coming to work, learning his lines, and delivering performances that made Frank Barone unforgettable. Despite his health battles, Peter never asked to be written out. He didn't slow down unless it was absolutely necessary. That kind of dedication says everything about the kind of person he was. He genuinely loved being part of Everybody Loves Raymond. The cast and crew weren't just co-workers to him. They were like a second family. Before Raymond, Peter had already made a name for himself with powerful roles in both comedy and drama. He played the monster in Young Frankenstein, appeared in Taxi Driver, and earned Emmy nominations for various roles. He could have taken it easy by the time Everybody Loves Raymond came around, but he didn't. He dove into the role of Frank with everything he had, and it paid off. He became a household name to a whole new generation of viewers. When the show ended in 2005, Peter was part of that farewell. No dramatic exits, no off-screen drama. Just a well-loved show coming to a graceful end. Sadly, less than 2 years later, Peter passed away due to multiple myeloma and heart disease. He was 71 years old. Ray Romano has spoken publicly about how difficult it was to lose Peter so soon after the show ended. The whole cast reunited for his funeral. The truth is, Peter Boyle never left Everybody Loves Raymond. He stayed until the very last episode. And because of that dedication, Frank Barone lives on. Madylin Sweeten played Ally Barone, the oldest of the Barone children. She was just 5 years old when the show started, and by the time it ended 9 years later, she was a teenager. For nearly a decade, she grew up on set, living a life most kids can't imagine. When the show wrapped in 2005, Madylin didn't jump straight into another sitcom or chase big Hollywood roles. Instead, she did something rare for a child actor. She took a step back. Being on a hit TV show from such a young age can be a double-edged sword. It opens doors and makes you a household name, but it also puts enormous pressure on you. For Madylin, the fame that came with Everybody Loves Raymond became overwhelming. People saw her as just Ally, not as her real self. After the show ended, she realized she needed time to figure out who she was outside of that character. It wasn't that she hated acting or wanted to leave the business forever. She just needed space to breathe, to grow, and to experience life without the constant public eye. So instead of diving into another big project, she took time away from the mainstream industry and focused on her personal life, her mental health, and just being a normal young adult. Eventually, she found her way back into acting, but in a much more low-key, independent way. She started taking on roles in indie films and doing voice work, creative outlets that allowed her to express herself without the pressure of the spotlight. She wasn't interested in fame for the sake of it. She wanted to do meaningful work while living a life that felt healthy and balanced. It was a brave move, and one that makes her story genuinely admirable. The twin boys, Jeffrey and Michael Barone, were played by real-life twins Sawyer and Sullivan Sweeten. They were cast on the show when they were just 16 months old, basically babies. From then on, their childhood was spent under studio lights, in front of cameras, on set surrounded by adult actors and crew. It was all they knew for the better part of a decade. As the show wrapped up in 2005, both boys were around 10 years old. There was a conscious decision by the boys and their family to step back from the industry and return to a more normal life. They went home to Texas, went to school, and tried to be regular teenagers. That decision was about protecting their mental health and giving them a real shot at life outside Hollywood. Unfortunately, the transition from being a TV kid to just a kid can be incredibly hard. Sawyer reportedly struggled with depression and a sense of disconnection in the years after the show ended. Tragically, in 2015, he died at the age of 19. His passing shocked fans and brought renewed attention to the mental health challenges that many former child actors face when the cameras stop rolling. Sullivan, meanwhile, has remained largely out of the public eye. He has occasionally spoken about his brother and their shared experiences, but for the most part, he has chosen privacy, and that's completely understandable. Their story adds a bittersweet layer to the legacy of the show. While Everybody Loves Raymond brought joy to millions, behind the scenes, two young boys were navigating a world far more complicated than what appeared on screen. Chris Elliott's time on Everybody Loves Raymond as Peter McDougal, Amy's oddball brother, was one of the show's more memorable recurring appearances. His character was quirky, socially awkward, and brought a totally different kind of humor to the Barone family dynamic. But just as quickly as he showed up, he disappeared. The reason wasn't dramatic at all. There was no behind-the-scenes feud, no creative differences, no scandal. It simply came down to scheduling conflicts and Elliot's already jam-packed career. He had always been more of a creative wanderer, juggling acting, writing, and comedy gigs all at once. Everybody Loves Raymond was just one part of what he was doing at the time. His guest role added flavor, but he was never meant to be a permanent fixture. Katherine Helmond played Lois Whalen, Deborah's sophisticated and often hilariously snobby mother. Every time she appeared, she left a strong impression, but fans noticed her absence in the later seasons. The truth is simple. By the time she took on the role, Helmond was already a respected actress who was semi-retired and selective about her work. She had earned her place in television history through shows like Soap and Who's the Boss, and she wasn't looking to restart a full-time career. She had decided to spend more time enjoying her personal life, being with family, traveling, and stepping out of the spotlight. The show's creators respected her decision completely, and she appeared whenever she was available. What made the show so enduringly popular comes down to one thing: honesty. It never tried to be outrageous or flashy. It captured the familiar messiness of family life. The bickering, the meddling, the jealousy, and underneath it all, the deep and unbreakable love. The cast had chemistry that felt lived in rather than scripted. The writing was sharp, but never forced. Decades later, the show still holds up because family never goes out of style.